Welcome to Mediocre Gaming, and today we're playing World of Warships Legends. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salutations. Today, ready to cruise. Let's get to it. So the cruiser is currently one of 3 classes that you can play in World of Warships Legends. It is the very first ship that you will play, and it occupies a very large swath of the gameplay. Now, how you play the cruiser will depend a lot on your gameplay style, which will dominate anything else, really, and then the type of cruiser that you're using. There are a wide variety of cruisers, and if you can slightly modify your play style to suit the optimal playstyle of that particular cruiser, then I think you will see your statistics go up and your ability to survive through skirmishes and battles, and not only survive but also put out some good damage numbers. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of the minutia of playing, World of Warships, where the angle of the projectile might change, whether it's going to penetrate, over penetrate, or be ricocheted off of armor, but rather I'm going to talk in generalities and that sort of thing. So depending on what type of cruiser you're playing, you could be playing a more of a light cruiser, which is closer to a destroyer, or you could play a heavy cruiser, which is closer to a battleship, or something in between. Cruisers are kind of a hybrid of the destroyer and the battleships anyway. Some of them have light armor, some have heavy armor, some have more guns in the front, some have more guns in the rear. So depending on what type of cruiser you're playing, you will need to modify your playstyle accordingly. And additionally, you'll have to look at things like reload speed and types of shells that you have available. If you only have armor-piercing shells available, then obviously you're going to play a little bit differently than if you can choose between HE or high explosive shells and armor-piercing shells. So in addition to the types of shells, you have to see if you also have torpedoes. Some cruisers have torpedoes, some do not. And then of course you'll have to look at, how many salvos or how many salvos per side that a particular cruiser has. See what your consumables are. Do you have a catapult fighter? Do you have a smoke screen? Do you have sonar, etc.? Those will all factor into how you play. If you have a smoke screen, generally you can play a little bit more aggressively, knowing that that smoke screen is a backup, versus if you do not. If you have a catapult fighter, you'll be able to act more as a scout, looking for and finding enemy units. If you have sonar, then you'll be able to avoid incoming torpedoes a little bit more easily if that is on. Additionally, sonar is also good for finding ships, especially destroyers, when they are in smoke or hiding around islands, etc. Depending on the tier of ship that you're playing and the range of the sonar will depend on how useful that is. Now, in addition to that, you're also going to look at the placement of the ship's cannons. So the main battery, maybe you have 5 cannons, maybe you have 2 cannons, maybe you have 12. You're going to look at the placement on the ship. So if you have 1 turret or 1 battery in the front and you have 2 in the back, versus maybe a different cruiser that has 2 batteries in the front and 1 in the back, will change your playstyle as well. Because ultimately, I think that cruisers occupy the space of the harasser. They're good at harassing enemy units, not necessarily doing a little damage, but not necessarily doing huge damage numbers either. But damage over time, of course, will build up as long as your accuracy is decent. So if you have more turrets in the front, you're more of a chaser, so you're going to go chase enemies down that are maybe running away. Of course, there is a point where you will need to pull back because the battleships aren't going to be as fast as you are. On the other side of the coin, if you have 2 guns on the back and only 1 on the front, you're going to be a scurrier, or to be more politically correct, a That's the type of ship that's going to make a strategic withdrawal from a battle. So you're going to run away and you're going to be taking shots at enemies that are chasing after you. Now, additionally, you're going to look at your reload speed. Generally, I would say rule of thumb is anything above 10 seconds is going to be a slower reload speed with more damage. Less than 10 seconds is going to be a faster reload speed with a little bit less damage. Now, this is more of a rule of thumb than a hard and fast rule, obviously, and there's going to be certain perks or commanders that you can use that will modify your reload time, the grouping of your shells, how much damage they do, the chance that they'll catch fire from an HE shell. And this will all play into your playstyle and what you're going to use in these different skirmishes. Now, obviously, it doesn't make sense to use HE shells if you have a commander that specializes in AP shells and vice versa. Additionally, if you only have a less than 10% chance of setting the ship on fire with your HE shell, it doesn't make as much sense to use HE shells as AP shells, as the increase in damage from AP shells will certainly make up the burn damage. Now, when you're looking at your ship, do be sure to check your consumables, as sometimes, on the rare occasion, they can be switched out with another. So instead of a catapult fighter, you might be able to have a smoke screen. So want to look at the overview to see where your ship will shine or where it is lacking. Sometimes you can see maybe the traverse speed of your turrets are slower, or maybe it has above average speed, or maybe the AP shells are more likely to overpenetrate, etc. So all the different things will make a difference in how you play and how well you will survive based on those things, and of course your play style. Now, as an in-between, the cruisers are generally faster than battleships but slower than destroyers. Their turning radius is obviously better, and rudder shift time is better than battleships, but usually not as good as destroyers. Destroyers are generally very nimble. Battleships are big and do a lot of damage. Now, ultimately, the best thing to do would be to play and get experience with a particular cruiser so you know the ins and outs of that cruiser before you move on to a different one. The more experience you have, the better you'll be able to play with that cruiser. Unfortunately, since cruisers run the gambit from near battleship to near destroyer, it'll be up to you to figure out which ones they are and which type of harasser they are and which one better suits your playstyle. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check us out on social media, and thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.